combined event between the South African Secular Society and Ogod. And we've got Hans here from Stellenbosch who's going to give us an update on the Ogod court proceedings. He got involved in this when his own kids went to school around 2008. And he's going to be telling you all the rest. Welcome, Hans.
Thank you, Yanni. I hope you guys can hear me. I don't really have a voice that carries, but if you can't, just wave at me or something. You can call me Hans or the Antichrist or Satan's son. I go by many names. You don't need to be formal, in other words. Anybody else from Stellenbosch? No. I got involved, as Yanni said, in 2008 when my kids, I have triplets, so they all got into school the same age. And there was a Jesus Week planned where all the kids were going to wear little yellow ribbons, which immediately reminded me of the Jews wearing the yellow stars during the Second World War. So I wrote an email, got involved with a school governing body. They finally closed off the communication, got an article in the report, which got people riled up. Then George Claassen, who many of you may know from RSG, he's well known in Afrikaans circles. He heard about the thing and he said that his organization will take schools to court, which of course created another headline. But for reasons that he needs to explain, he couldn't go forward with this. So I got a call from Johannesburg, de Villiers, on a Friday morning, telling me that George has withdrawn, and am I willing to take over the mantle? Had I then said no, the whole thing would have fallen flat. I knew that. So I was forced to say yes. That's how I think ek het geroepe gevoel. And I said yes. So I made the report again, front page the next Sunday. From there it was downhill. I don't have any political ambitions. I don't particularly like being well known or being spoken about, whatever, but somebody has to do it. I quickly realized that most people in the same situation cannot afford to go forward with something like this. Some people lose their jobs, some people that are worried that their kids may be victimized, which does happen. We have ample examples of that. Some people have their marriages broken up, family reject them. Most of those things happen to me. I'm in a fortunate position that I do my business overseas mostly, so the overseas people are way beyond this stage, especially in Europe. So I could afford to go forward. I did lose all my friends, all my schoolmates, my family. My own brother was alienated from me. So I'm in a weird position where I can't discuss my history with anybody. The person I've known the longest that I'm still friends with is my wife, who didn't go to school with me. But the final push came when I sat down with my wife and said, you can't tell your children this is wrong. What is happening in schools is wrong. And one day they will ask me, but why didn't you do anything about it? That was a simple decision. So I went on with the thing. It went along for quite a number of years, but then died a death because institutions like FETSAS, and particularly by Paul Colditz, who spoke on RSG long ago, gave the impression that, according to them, the schools may ignore the national policy on religion. And the schools are free to do what they are currently doing. In other words, they very politely told me to fly a kite. I had to do something in the legal field to force them to do that, which I simply couldn't afford. And they knew that any parent who could afford to take them to court has the money to put his child into private schooling. So why bother with the 24,000 public schools? So I was stuck between a rock and a hard place until I met an excellent legal team, Hendrik van Nieuwenhuizen and H.P. Murray, senior counsel, and helping them Kevin Hyde, attorney, Now, the two advocates are the same people who are doing the euthanasia case, which is coming up again on the 4th of November. So they are well known in the liberal fighting for freedoms arena. And that made the whole difference. Once we started that, then all hell broke loose. That was one of the discussions I had on television. It wasn't my decision to put me there in the background. I looked like, it had Cape Town Mountain, the whole two to the back. So I looked like the Poseidon. Well, thank you. Kali Kriel from AfriForum, yeah, immediately said they will put 2 million rand down to defend, which got my advocates upset because they don't know where that much money is going to. But anyway, that's where the fun started. So let's go quickly. Why are we where we were, where we are now? And in essence, it's about the demise of Christian national education. Not that there's anything wrong with Christian, but Christian national education was about as close as you can get to fascism as you can, where the elite, the view of the elite, and that elite being a combination of the government and what is known as the sister churches, through activities and institutions like the Broederbond, decided for us what we were supposed to know and not know. That not know part is the big thing. What we're not supposed to think about and not learn. And of course they were responsible for other atrocities as well, which are equally, if not more important, but that is not my choice of focus. I'm in the education as we are now. But all of you here are probably, or most of you here, not everybody, old enough to remember those. Okay, I edited it, but I have to admit. But you remember those things. And this was it, the volk and fatherland, the old vierkleur, my God, die volk. So this is where the tribalist character of the government comes to the fore. That was supposed to end. I need to just show this. This is typically what was taught to people. This was from a church information piece where it tells you that we shouldn't integrate. You know, die volk must remain true to their calling. The white folk brought the light to the darkest end of Africa. And we were not to mingle. And you will remember that. That was supposed to die in 1994. Not forgotten, because every country has a history. I'm not a person who would advise that people don't learn about the history. There are reasons, good and bad, right or wrong, for how we got where we are. But a new dispensation was negotiated as best we could without a civil war. And that was supposed to be implemented around 1994. The Constitution took a few years to complete, so that was only promulgated in 1996. But we were supposed to move forward. So before 1996, what Christian national education brought us was Calvinist, not the European Calvinist. On Wikipedia you can search for Afrikaner Calvinism, and it explains quite neatly what that was, what it entailed. Some would call it racist, I would call it tribalist, because it was the folk. It wasn't even including the English people really. In terms of political power, yes, but in terms of this culture that had to be built and protected, which they were very successful at, and I'm not saying that is bad. But they did that at the cost of others. And that is obviously that got them in hot water later on. But it was, hey, you should help me. Tell me, you're going too fast. Obviously it was authoritarian. The church helped decide what we were supposed to learn in biology. You can find the references in the history. And it was a sanitized reality. We didn't know about evolution, about sociology even, about paleontology. Those were strange subjects that weird people did. So the reality was sanitized for us. What happened in the black communities was sanitized to us. When we had uprisings in 1976 and later, what happened was sanitized. So we only got this limited picture of what was happening. Now again, that's not particular about our government. It happens with many, many governments. So it's not unique. But it did create the problems that we had to solve in 1994, which to a large degree we did on paper. Now that was Christian national education, which was supposed to be replaced with critical thinking. And there are things that are central to critical thinking, teaching that to children, such as being able to debate without being hounded for what your beliefs are, reflection, analysis, acquisition of information without restraint. Those things were supposed to be opened up to us, to our children, and they still are not. And that's what the fight is about. So just to explain how educationists see education is, you have what we've, in our curriculums, what we have developed, a curriculum based on evidence that is child-centered. In other words, it's not government-centered, it's not ideologically centered, particularly ideological. Everything comes from an ideology, fair enough. But it's as open an ideology as possible. And that feeds into the technical curriculum. The technical curriculum is what you find in books. So everything that children learn in school, what is printed in the books, what is part of the curriculum, that's the formal or called technical curriculum. But we all know at school you also learn other things that are not in the curriculum. Social skills, character of the school, etc. So that is what is referred to as the null curriculum, which encompasses the technical curriculum. But why that is important is, unbeknownst to us, there's also a hidden curriculum. And this hidden curriculum, we'll go into more detail later, that is what drives the us versus them distinction that we find in the schools up to this day. It is preferential, it gives preference to certain groups, be it religious or racial groups. It's divisive, in other words, we are better than them. It's this us versus them thing. And it's illegal. I know AfriForum doesn't agree with my statement, and that's what the courts need us to help decide. Now, the constitution that was negotiated and was finally put in place in 1996 does many things. There are really many things. You'll know all that because of the fights that our president, beloved Zuma, has in court, and many other people. So we are very aware of our constitution. But regarding this case, there are 3 points that are very important. That is equality. In other words, a state institution may not give certain citizens priority over others, because that is what happened before 1996. You have a right to privacy. So a school can't ask any child, are you pregnant, are you gay, what religion you support. They're not allowed to do that, because you may choose to divulge that, not an issue. But the state, the constitution protects the closet. It's your choice if you want to come out of the closet. And obviously freedom to be religious, freedom to talk about God, freedom to not be religious. And the state institutions must, by law, protect those freedoms. So where the French would go, fraternité, égalité, liberté, sorry, that's first, we would go égalité, intimité, liberté. Those are our core principles of the Constitution. There's also a policy that was developed in consultation with many religious groups and signed off with lots of going back and forward and fighting and agreeing in principle, that sort of thing. But eventually it was promulgated by Dr. Kader Asmal in August of 2003. And that states very, very clearly that public schools, we're not talking about private schools here, public schools may not adopt or promote a particular religion. They must explain what religions are about, just like any other phenomenon that you explain in school. They must clarify values. That is something that is very important, and they particularly say that churches and other institutions may play an important role in that, in clarifying values. But the school may not choose a subset of values that gives one religion preference over another one. And it must be accepting, secure, and respectful towards all. Now, that is important. You can't tell, imagine if you have a school that says, the majority of students here are white, so we'll call this a white school, but blacks are welcome. You can imagine how a child of 6 that enters the school will feel. It's not his school, it's not her school. It also clearly states that as far as the state is concerned, not the individual, as far as the state is concerned, all religions are equal. The state is impartial towards religion, and that we are value neutral. In other words, we cannot say that somebody of a particular religion is a better person because he accepts that religion. So, here are examples of the hidden curriculum at work. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, such examples. You have to sign off that you pray to God. Everything is slipped in there, there are the 3 wise men. You have to get your results at the church. You can imagine how somebody who doesn't go to church or he goes to some other temple, perhaps, how welcome he must feel. So what we find in South Africa specifically is that the majority of schools, if not all, privilege Christianity. Its dogmas and its myths pay lip service to equality and humiliate the others. They never feel that they are part of the same school. The national policy further states that the state through its school is not to provide religious instruction. It can teach children about religion, and we encourage that. Our organization encourages that. We want that. It's already in the curriculum. Children learn about the various religions, and that is perfectly fine. It's necessary. But it may not give preference to one over the other one. And also then, you can't say evolution is a theory and creation is a theory. We know creation is a myth. There are many of them. So it's not for the school. The parents may decide to teach a child that. That's their choice. It's not the school. It's not the state institution to do that. So when we have someone like Paul Calder saying, the teacher who is worth his or her salt will say there are different theories and will present evolution from those different theories. Now obviously this guy is either ignorant about what the term theory means, or he knows that most people are ignorant, therefore he can abuse that lack of knowledge among most people. That was said in public, so I can quote him there. And this is where I would like to quote Neil deGrasse Tyson, who will be familiar to most of you. He said, this case is about the need to separate ignorant, scientifically illiterate people from the ranks of teachers. We must stop being sentimental, being the least, not wanting to affront or not wanting to create conflict. When teachers tell your children, we are not going to learn about evolution, or that some parents will be upset if we do that, or that there are alternative theories, it's illegal. So in August of 2014, the good advocates, with my name at the bottom of the documentation, asked the courts to interdict schools about the following. And we identified 59 activities that, as far as we are concerned, are illegal. Now, Martin Luther nailed 95 points to the church door a couple of hundred years ago. We only identified 59, and I'm going to go through a couple of them, not all of them, it's just too many. Events where pupils are identified as members or non-members of a faith. We spoke about privacy earlier. That has to be free association. You can't force that onto a child. Supporting a specific religion, I've already mentioned. Religious decoration of only one religion. So if in a classroom a teacher would like to put up a symbol of Christianity, she may do that. But then we need to see also symbols of the Muslims, the crescent moon. We want to see Hinduism, Pastafarianism. We want the symbols up there. We need to teach children about religions in the plural. religious references in any anthem, objective, ethos, badge. That is a very subtle but important one where children sing in their songs, their school anthems, that we pray to Jesus, or we pray to God, or God looks over us, or God determines our future. Right? So that inherently gives preference to one religion over another one. It's not that you're not allowed to think that. It's that you're asking all children in one school to sing to some of them, to the God that most of them or some of them support. Promoting religious values, and we'll come to that later, a little bit later on. Teaching creationism as a scientific theory. Obviously they abuse the layperson's lack of understanding of the term of theory. Allowing exposure to religious coercion. On the scientific theory, you probably know about the Kitzmüller versus Dover court case where it was proven that creationism is nonsense, it's a myth. It's nice nonsense, but it is a myth. So the court cases have been won already. Approving evangelization, that is very, very visible in many schools, whereas pre-1994, most of the schools adopted the more traditional NG, Dopper type, I should say Gaatjie Ponders, I suppose. That sort of character, the nationalist religious character, whereas today many schools adopt the more charismatic stuff. The praise Jesus and finding soldiers for Jesus. Opening activities with religion or prayer, I don't need to expand on that, you know that one. Prayers at sporting matches. Inviting religious leaders to address learners in school context on religion. So it's not for the school to invite religious leaders, but the national policy on religion specifically state that the churches and mosques and other institutions can play an important role, so that leaders of the community may utilize the school grounds to promote their religion, but attendance must be free and voluntary. And that's not what happens when a school invites them. Reading religious texts or praying in classes, I'll talk more on that. Teaching about sin, very popular. Distributing or funding religious material or promulgating religious stories. There are schools who even teach mathematics using religious symbols. How many crosses are there? How many churches? If you have two churches and you turn one into a mosque, what do you have? Prompting profitable marriage. Prompting learners to take religious texts on school. They have rugby camps, and then they ask children to bring Bibles with. Not rugby balls, Bibles. Promoting religious youth camps and excursions. Again, anybody can arrange a religious youth camp and advertise and ask people's children if they want to attend, but it's not for the school to arrange it, because then the school becomes involved in promoting a particular religion. Rendering or funding religious instruction. They define the terms in the national policy. You get religious instruction, which is trying to convince a child to be religious. That is different from what the national policy wants, is to teach children about religions. And one of my favorites, causing pupils to disclose their religion, belief or conscientious objections. You'll see that examples from a Stellenbosch school. They don't even ask you what faith you subscribe to. They ask you, watter kerkverband? Now, which of the Christian churches do you belong to? And we state in our affidavit that you cannot request a child to divulge that information. If he wants to, he's welcome. There was a case in Welkom, for example, where the schools wanted children to let them know when they fall pregnant, so they can make special arrangements for them. And the courts found that you can't force that onto children. They may divulge it if they want to, or obviously you reach a stage where it's difficult to hide. But if a pupil in grade 12 should fall pregnant in June, for example, nothing prevents her to go through the normal channel and write her exams at the end and qualify. If she now has to tell the school that she's pregnant, and they immediately make arrangement that she goes to school, to home, and maybe study from there, I mean, that's nonsense. You cannot force that onto a pupil. So we expect the courts to be very clear in this regard. Who are our opponents? Some of these you may recognize. Cause for Justice, they are against anything liberal or progressive. They want internet censorship. They want, they are very frequently, they and Freedom of Religion SA, against porn on television channels, you know, that old story, where it will corrupt our children's minds and it will lead to the downfall of South Africa. AfriForum of Fetsas, those are old guys. That is a weird name. I try to, the acronym for that I think is Slarty Bart Fast. And then South African Teachers Union, who's headed by Chris Klopper, who refers to me as Die Vent van Stellenbosch. These are all the guys that oppose us. Now, there are also other institutions like Section 27 who don't specifically support us, but their affidavits are clearly in the same trend that we are arguing for. So in that sense, they do support us. The Minister of Education has filed an affidavit which supports what we are trying to say as well. So it's not just a question of us against everybody else. Now, when the popo hit the fan, it became very clear that the image that was conveyed to people, especially in the Afrikaans press, was completely distorted. For example, AfriForum brought this out that says, keep religion in schools. If you read our papers and our press statement that I sent out in August of 2014, it clearly states there categorically, we're not trying to get any religion out of schools. We in fact want more religions in schools and the freedom to choose. So we never asked to remove religion from schools. And the funny part is, if you read then, you might have difficulty, so I'll just read some highlights here. AfriForum's mandate includes that they defend their members of society with a specific focus on minority community groups. Which is interesting because they want to defend the minority when it comes to national stuff, but when it comes to a school and the majority happens to be Christian, they want to defend the majority against the minority. It says there that they refer to minority groups and all members of society being equal and equally benefit from the use of the school stuff. So in their mandate, they contradict what they're fighting for in court, which is, as people would say, the irony burns. It's important to realize we never asked for the removal of any religion from schools. All religions, as far as we are concerned, should be present in schools so that kids can feel welcome, whatever they actually subscribe to. So we said that, any feeling of victimization, when this hit the press, and we'll go to that later, the big hoo-ha that was created in the press was very far from what we asked for. And that, of course, got everybody to pack their little ventertjies because Armageddon is coming. And this is what we saw in the Afrikaans press. There wasn't much in the English press. There was some. I was interviewed by some English channels, but it wasn't a big thing there. Afrikaans press had a field day. So they launched a large-scale study in the schools that we highlighted to prove their point. It didn't quite work because their findings, I think, was more in our favor than their favor. They're answering papers. Freudian slip. Whereas we identified 6 schools, they listed, I think it was 7 or 9 other schools to prove that schools can do it better. But the irony is they couldn't prove it here, so they had to find other schools in the country to prove that it can be done better. They also got the opinions of various professional opinions, they call them, to support their case. And what they came up with is, first of all, regarding those schools, we were lying. Regarding those schools is, look how we accommodate the others. These guys told us that the kids shouldn't be distressed if Christianity is encouraged, but if they are coerced, it actually breeds character. They state that in the papers, okay? So it's a good thing. And they have a couple of theologians here that supposedly tells us that no, but evangelization shouldn't really happen. And you know the old story about the real Christian. The people who do it aren't real Christians. No true Scotsman fallacy. They had other things that really upset them, like they were upset about the logo, which I find strange because I think lots of other things are quite more offensive. Like telling a child that his parents are going to hell. I think that is more offensive than an acronym. Somebody posted this somewhere on the Facebook group. It wasn't me, incidentally, unfortunately. But that got them riled up as well, because really the impression that we created, you know, we're creating the image of they read in their Christianity. So we're creating the impression that Christians are backward. But there's no problem in telling children that people who don't believe are Satanists. That doesn't come up to them. As far as we're concerned, it's irrelevant. Same thing. Now he refers to me in person, Mr. Cole. That's why I'm referring to him in person. Now I'm not complaining about my school. This case isn't about me and my children's school. This case is about the nation. Okay? So I'm sorry, Mr. Colditz. It comes with the idea that the school has a constitutional right to be religious, and it says there that every person has a freedom of conscience and belief, etc. And it is true that the law sees an institution, including a school, as a legal person. That doesn't make him a human person. So for the sake of finances, for the sake of economy, you can hold a school liable as a legal person, but obviously a school cannot have a conscientious objection. When a war breaks out, they cannot say, this school is against fighting Swaziland, so therefore we will not go to war. They don't have that freedom. So a school is not a person. They're trying to stretch the definition too far. And then they also tell us that those who don't want to partake, so if the school decides that this will be a Muslim school and you don't want to participate, they will accommodate you. But does that happen? No. We see these things. Marijke Eckert. Marijke Kennard, wat ek nou sê Eckert. Dis 'n naam wat ek gesoek het. Marijke Kennard was uitgekry dat sy gaan hel toe gaan en sy's useless en sy moet eerder die skool verlaat in Oudtshoorn as wat sy durf daar wees as 'n ongelowige. En die Soweto lees ons van iemand wat 'n moslim was wat gesê het hierdie openbare skool is 'n Christenskool, daarom is 'n moslim nie welkom nie. En dan vra mens nou, wat gebeur in sulke gevalle? Wat doen iemand om te accommodate? Hulle doen niks nie. So hulle lieg, weer eens. Dit vat Ogod om tot aksie te kom. Daar is die ou storie in Holland om al baie gehoor, as jy nie 'n religie het nie, dan het jy nie waardes nie. Maar skryf nou sê hulle hierdie skool hang, I'm talking Afrikaans here. This school supports Christian values. If you write to any school, I dare you to do that. Write to a school and say, I see that you propose that this school it promotes Christian values. What are those Christian values? Because we know for some that includes the inferiority of women, the stoning of gays, etc. So it depends on, so I'm asking you, what Christian values do you propose? You will never get an answer. I'll give you 1,000 rand if you get a proper answer from a school on what they mean by Christian values. Okay? It's also not substantiated. We know that the world's happiest countries happen to be the least religious. And it's not reflected in their own values. Now, FETSAS has this program where they help schools instill a values-based program. And in their suggestions, you won't find religion. So they're not being true to nowhere, or let me put it differently, everywhere in the affidavit they contradict themselves. Another defense is that parents have the primary right to educate their children, which right extends to an education in values. True, it includes education in religion, but you cannot task that on the state. If you are too lazy or too babblers to drive your child to church on a Sunday morning to attend Sunday school, don't expect the teacher to teach him religion on the Monday. Again, from their own values, it doesn't seem like religion is that important. So this questionnaire they sent out, they asked children in those 6 schools from grade 1 to grade 12. They had this intricate and quite large study that they did and paid quite an amount of money for. They found that the Christian values are actually upsetting to some children. So where they wanted to prove that it's a good thing and the children are happy, they found that there is a minority who had a negative perception or felt negatively, which is what you traditionally call shooting yourself in the foot. Because thank you very much, you've just proved what we said from the beginning. But then they come with this evolved excuse, say, all right, it may be so that those children feel unhappy or less welcome or under duress or coerced, whatever you want to call it. But that's a good thing, because you shouldn't take challenges away from children. They need challenges to breed character. And we agree with that. Nothing wrong with that. But what's good for the one is good for the other one. So if they say, I'll go further on that point just now, but if there's a challenge to a child and that breeds character, that challenge from the school side needs to be equal. So then they try to defend it by saying, yes, the majority want. Now remember the values of AfriForum right at the beginning. Defending the minority rights. This is not what they say. If the majority of the learners want, if the majority of the learners want that in a school, then the school must be free to be what the majority chooses. Obviously that contradicts it. So we say the Constitution doesn't mind what the majority wants. It's not about the majority. In fact, what the majority, minority, whatever it wants has become irrelevant in 1994. So when they try to defend by saying that this is moderately challenging situation are vital for development of mastery, resilience, blah, blah, blah. In other words, building character. Now we are talking here about in Oudtshoorn, where our one parent's children are called Satanists and sons of Satan. That apparently breeds character. But we want to know is why do one minority group need this challenge, whereas the majority not? Okay? The Constitution doesn't allow for that. So we said that after all was written, and they filed about I think if I remember right, 1,944 pages in their replying affidavits. That was mostly smoke and mirrors. As far as we're concerned, most of it is irrelevant. Because what they found and what they admitted is contradicting the Constitution. The case is quite simple. You can't say discrimination in certain respects is correct. You want majority rule. Imagine, this is what they now want. That is what they actually state. This is a Christian school, but non-Christians will be accommodated. Imagine if they said, this is a hetero school, but gays will be accommodated. Imagine if they said, this is a white school, but blacks will be accommodated. Which is exactly the same thing. But why does that become easy to identify as problematic, but not a religion one? So you know Animal Farm. They're creating state institutions where some are more equal than others. Now this is one thing that riles me up. We have teachers doing various bad things, evil things. non-Christian things. They will ask a child sitting in, says, who does not have Jesus in his heart? Now, if you're 6 years old, sitting in grade 1, grade 0 school, and a teacher asks you to identify yourself as being different from all your mates, that really makes you feel good, right? That breeds character. Okay? And if you should do that, or if your parents should tell the school, listen, I don't want my child to participate in religious observances, they will ask a child, please go stand outside while we pray. Klein Jannie, ons gaan nou bid vir liewe Jesus. Jou ma sê, jy hou nie van liewe Jesus nie. So, jy gaan hel toe. And that is told to children. My children, in my children's class was a Muslim, and there was a teacher that told them that that little lady is going to hell. I had a call while speaking to Prof. Dani Goosen from the FRK on Wednesday. While I was talking to him, I have a call from Stellenbosch. But that exact same problem. A woman, a mother, being upset, her child has sleepless nights because he now believes he's going to hell. He's never heard of hell before. Few dominees still teach their children about hell. Teachers are not qualified to disseminate religion in class. The effect of allowing persons to leave as opposed to persons to come to religious observances is that those who leave will be labeled as different from the majority. That is where the freedom and privacy comes in. If you want to tell everybody that you're a Christian and you were reborn and baptized and you heard voices, be my guest. Right? But if you don't, if you actually didn't hear the voices, you shouldn't be forced to try and fake it. So what we are fighting for is to get rid of this hidden sectarian curriculum. Not to remove religion from schools. Public schools are for all children, so it's a question of not replacing Christianity, and I keep on referring to Christianity because that seems to be the big culprit. We know of schools where there is a majority of Muslims, and they close, for example, on Fridays they close early so that the children can go with their parents or without their parents to their places of worship. So everybody is accommodated. That doesn't mean that Christians are not allowed to leave at 12 o'clock because they're not Muslims. Everybody gets treated the same way. Those schools are doing a much better job of it than most of the Afrikaans schools and so-called Christian schools in this vicinity. And the Constitution is clear that to promote the achievement of equality, legal steps may be taken. That's where we have BEE from. Or BBBBBEE as it keeps on getting expanded. And obviously if schools are not doing what they're supposed to do, then we can enact legislation to get them to get with the program. Now this is what you've all been waiting for and you're falling asleep for, so let me go through this. The Constitution was published in 1996, the national policy in 2003. My first engagement was in May 2008. So that's when the state of affairs became public knowledge through the papers. We reached the headlines in September, and then it died because, as I explained earlier, I didn't have money to go forward with the legal cases, and they knew that he's too poor to do that. Until I got hold of a team of legal experts, very keen on fighting the cause, mentioned them before. That's when we started moving, and then the pawpaw hit the fan. There are various reasons why things took long. Ministers aren't that fast, and they have good reasons for not being so. So nobody was forcing others to abide by critical timelines. So this took a long time, but we are now at the point of heads of argument. In other words, everybody has done their affidavits and saying this is what he's doing wrong, and I think this is blah, blah, blah. We've done that. It's done and dusted. We now, heads of argument says, when I get to court, these are the arguments that I will be reasoning in court. And the court uses that as the basis of proceedings, and from that it determines roughly how long the case might take, etc. Our heads of argument will be filed next week. Now, in theory, then, the opposition has 15 or 20 days, whatever, to file that. We're not going to push for the limit. We want everybody, this is an important case, everybody has fair time to do all their bits. But the opposition, the opposing parties, being Fetsas and Company, or Paul Caldert's by name, will then file their heads of arguments. That's the next step. And we expect that probably to happen after the Christmas recess. So we're looking at February, somewhere February. Then all the amici, if they are still with us, and if they have money to proceed, and if they have something new to add, that's the only thing that they may do. If they have something they want to add to what's happening that none of us have covered yet, then they can also file heads of argument. And that'll be a limited time, I think 15 days or something. We'll keep them to that. When that is, everything has been filed at the courts, the court sits down and decides this will take maybe 2 days, 3 days. Is this a special case? Is it time, urgency, etc.? And then, according to their diary, we'll pick a court date. And we expect that court date to be roughly in the middle of next year. So the last bit of the first semester, of the legal semester next year. So we hope that this case will reach the High Court of Gauteng, South Division, May, June next year. And I will try to be here for the court case as well. And I hope you'll all be wearing t-shirts for the occasion. We expect them to appeal. Somebody will appeal. Will we win? You can't say yes or no because judges are fickle things. They are paid to think of everything and they may come up with something that nobody's thought of before. So there's always the odd chance that something unexpected happens. But we feel confident for the simple reason that what we're arguing for is not that somebody is evil, that we're simply asking for the implementation of the national policy of religion based on the Constitution of South Africa. So we're not asking for changes to the laws of the country. We're simply asking them to do what the Constitution requires them to do. So as far as we're concerned, unless something weird happens, we shall win. And they will then probably appeal. And this shall go further on. It may be referred directly to the Constitutional Court, we can't predict. It may go to Appeals Court, and then from there, Constitutional Court. But the case is likely to end up in the Constitutional Court eventually. So even if the court case is middle of next year, it won't be the end of the story. That's unlikely. Remember, the Afrikaners have a lot of money. They will pay for the legal defense. Why will they pay for it? It's not so much that they think they're doing the right thing, to my mind. I think they know that what they're doing is not really the right thing, but there's been no jurisprudence. The laws haven't been made alive yet. Anybody know something about the legal system? We have new laws that says this is supposed to be what's happened. If you don't do that, a magistrate's court is not likely to say that you're breaking the Constitution. He will want a court verdict, an earlier court verdict that he can refer to, the case of that versus that says you're not allowed to do that. So that is what we need to establish. And the higher up we can establish it, in other words, at the Constitutional Court, the more powerful it becomes. Once that has happened, if a teacher or a school principal or the school as such transgresses, you don't need to approach like I have had to do, to go to attorneys and go to the High Court to get this changed. But anybody 18 or older can go to his local police station and say, this has been the court verdict. Hierdie meneer Poggenpoel doen hierdie en hierdie wat duidelik not in accordance is with what the court said. Therefore, it's contempt of court. Therefore, Mr. Policeman, please go and arrest Mr. Poggenpoel for contempt of court. It becomes a very easy, cheap thing to do. That is why it's important for jurisprudence to be established. There's, of course, also the other reason. Some people, and we see that in the institutions opposing us, they feel it's their God-given duty to fight the cause for God, their Maker. If they don't do that, they're not true Christians. Or true Muslims, I would suppose, but in this case, true Christians. So They need to fight it. They are impelled to fight the case and to pay for it. And of course, if they should lose, as they may even expect to do, it's all part of God's mysterious plan. So they cannot give up. That's the thing. They cannot give up. The crusades must continue. As far as we're concerned, we're getting there. They've tried to find technicalities. For example, what's it? One thing they called non-joinder. We were supposed to dagvaarders. What's the word of dagvaarder again? Sue all 24,000 schools in South Africa. Join them all together. No, they're not going to win that one. But maybe, and I'm sure there are some that are hoping that the second coming will intervene or a miracle will happen. Stop playing. Stop fiddling. Hold it. That's Hendrik. Wolf and Richard gave me a little bit of money to come here, so thank you, Wolf and Richard from Somerset West. And these are the nice guys, Christa Brain, Andre Streiser, Marina Sparkum. They are the organizers of my 40-year reunion at Afrikaans Hoërskool in Kroonstad. You made me understand that I'm very unwelcome there. Vang die skimp. It's the exact words they use. So thank you, that motivated me. So here I am, it's part of why I'm here. Those kind of people make it worthwhile. We'll invite them to our party when we win.